Have you ever had one of those moments where you answer the admin line and you hear, "Yeah, this is operator 48 from the Metro Alarm Company," and instantly you think, "Oh, here we go again." Not because the incident is complicated and not because the details are going to be unclear. It's because it's an alarm call, and alarm calls are just weird. They're predictable, they're formatted, so you would think they'd be the easiest thing in the world to move quickly through the workflow. But somehow we've managed to make alarm delivery like running an obstacle course in one of those inflatable sumo wrestler suits. Not very efficient. But a better way for efficient alarm reporting does exist. The problem is we're just not using the information to the best of our ability. Because alarms enter the ECC differently than pretty much every other call for service, we need to talk about a new way that we use to ingest them. A way that gets that critical data into the CAD in seconds, without sacrificing any accuracy and the ability to update that information bi-directionally whenever it changes on either side. And do that without tying up resources or having to play 20 questions with an IVR or AI tool. So if that interests you, buckle up, because we're going to talk about something that's going to change everything that you know. And that's coming up next on Tips Today in Public Safety.
Welcome to Tips Today in Public Safety. I'm Spider Harrison, and on today's episode of Tips, Fletch is talking about alarm calls to 911. You know, those calls that show up constantly, sometimes for the most minor thing, but occasionally it's the real deal. And when it's the real deal, the clock is not your friend.
Spider, my friend, alarms are one of the few call types where the information is perfectly structured. It's predictable, but it's still forced to arrive in the most primitive way that we know. It's like trying to order pizza online, but then the restaurant has to call you back and makes you spell pepperoni 3 times slowly. Not efficient.
Welcome to Tips Today in Public Safety, your go-to infocast for news and information on public safety communications. Now here's Fletch with today's tips.
Welcome to Tips Today in Public Safety. This is Fletch. I'm a NENA certified ENP, and every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I bring you the latest, most informative takes on emergency communications. Today we're digging into how alarms come into the PSAP ECC, why the current workflow often just burns time, how past attempts at automation kind of just made things worse, and what a modern digital approach might look like if we just stop pretending the telephone is the only tool. Now, I promise you, this is not going to be a blame game episode where either side is left being the bad guy. This is going to be a let's get away from the system that forced everyone into bad options episode. So let's start at the beginning. Why alarms are uniquely messy. Here's what makes alarms such a unique animal. Alarm data is rigid, it's structured, it's formatted. So in theory, alarms should be the easiest incident type that gets ingested and dispatched. But the reality is alarms often originate outside the region or from a national center. And that matters because one of the simple things, International 911 system, just dial 911 and reach any PSAP. Because if they dial 911 from their center, they're going to get their local PSAP, not your PSAP, not your county, not even your state. So how do they reach you? Well, easy. They're forced to call a public 10-digit number, or if you're lucky, you've got a dedicated 10-digit alarm line. And you already know what happens next. High volume, tons of these calls all day, every day, and unfortunately many, not all, but many, are nothing. Now, some are real, some are verified, some are panic and duress, and some are hold-up alarms. So what did ECCs do when the call volume got too high? Well, they tried to scale, they tried to automate. Some even tried to implement AI to ingest this information and then generate a CAD request. The IVR trap, efficient until it isn't. Now, I want to be totally fair here. From the ECC PSAP perspective, an IVR or AI solution makes a ton of sense on paper. But let's look at the facts. You've got a structured event. You've got a predictable set of questions. You've got a call taker on the PSAP side who needs consistent information. So the logical choice is great. We'll just automate collection. We'll standardize it. We'll save time and reduce errors. But as far as IVRs go, they're rigid. They have their script, their sequencing. They've got their required fields and they've got their 20 questions, even if the incident is time critical. And the only thing that matters in the first 20 seconds are where is it, what is it, and is it confirmed? Everything else is kind of secondary in the moment. But the IVR doesn't care. It's a machine. It's doing the script. So while the alarm company goes and sits through prompt after prompt, minutes are ticking by, and in an active holdup scene, a real scenario, a verified panic alarm, minutes can be the difference between catching someone in the act and arriving to take the report. And this is where someone says, well, we automated alarm intake. But what they mean is, we built a consistent way to waste time. What did technology actually do here? Now this is the part where people get uncomfortable, so let's just say it plainly. The IVR technology didn't necessarily expedite alarm processing. It just made it feel more controlled. It made it feel more measurable. It made it feel more auditable. And I totally understand why people want that, but audible doesn't equal faster. And standardized doesn't equal better in the middle of an active event. What happened is we took a structured data problem and we solved it with a voice workflow, which is kind of like saying, hey, I've got this spreadsheet, let me fax it over to you. Now again, I'm not blaming the PSAPs or the alarm centers. Both are operating within their own constraints: staffing, compliance, call volume, service levels, and expectations from their customers as well as citizens. So the question remains, what do we do to solve the problem? Well, one thing is stop trying to make voice do what data should be doing. And that brings us to a better way. A better way. Electronic data exchange in seconds. Well, here's the good news. There is a better way, and it's not theoretical. It's standard electronic exchange. It's passing the alarm incident information from the monitoring center to the PSAPs in seconds as data. Structured, clean, consistent. And that data can generate a CAD incident immediately, or it can land in a workflow where a call taker validates it quickly and then dispatches. Either way, you just remove the biggest time sink, the phone call and the robot interview. Now, years ago, this was complicated or even impossible because the only way to do it was point-to-point data integration. That meant custom communications, custom circuits, custom maintenance, and everybody had a different interface, a different format, a different vendor, and a different special use case. But today we live in a world of standards, in a world with an infrastructure that connects everyone to everyone else. It's called the internet. Now, before anyone panics, let me say this clearly. Using IP connectivity does not mean the wild, wild west internet. It means you choose your security posture, choose your redundancy, and choose your resiliency. Multiple carriers, multiple paths, multiple connections, mesh topologies, all redundant facilities. You build it as secure and rugged as you need, so the concept is simple. Stop sending alarm data as a spoken script. Send it as the structured incident data that it is and do it over a network. Then let CAD do what CAD does best. The real win. Two-way updates without tying up a phone. Now here's the part I really want you to pay attention to, because this is where it goes from a nice improvement to this changes everything. You see, once you link the alarm provider and the PSAP, that connection's maintained beyond the initial notification. That lets you get two-way updates in the background. And that means things like if the key holder responds and says, "Hey, false alarm, staff error," that update can arrive to you without a second phone call, without tying up a call taker, and without sitting through that complex IVR or AI tool. What if the alarm company re-verifies or upgrades the threat level or confirms a duress? That update can now arrive immediately. And if there's a cancellation that meets your policy criteria, and yes, policy matters, that can happen quickly, cleanly, and with an audit trail automatically. If there are multiple trips, escalating signals, or additional sensor data, all of that can be appended to the original incident record automatically, and that's the biggest operational benefit. You save time, you reduce the congestion, you reduce or eliminate the transcription and errors. And most importantly, you keep your call takers available for the calls where a human voice is essential, because you don't want your most valuable resource tied up while the actual emergencies are pouring in. Now, next week we're going to talk about how agencies are adopting a new protocol to receive alarms without blowing up their existing workflow. And we're going to walk through some examples of what this can enable, from faster dispatch to smarter cancellations to better use of first responder resources. Oh, and one more point before we leave this week. Best of all, this doesn't have to be some magical licensing toll road that costs you a lot of money to exchange this data. This doesn't require per transaction fee just to exist. Now, sure, a vendor may charge you for the integration. That's work, that's real, that's effort, that's configuration, but the concept itself is just moving data like data likes to be moved. Okay, reality check time. Electronic alarm intake doesn't remove accountability. It changes where humans spend their time. If you're a PSAP, you still need policy. You decide what auto-creates a CAD incident, what requires a call taker validation, and what triggers an immediate dispatch, and what gets queued. And you're still going to deal with those false alarms. But here's the difference. When the data arrives structured, you reduce transcription errors, you reduce repeat questioning, you reduce phone congestion, and you minimize the time between alarm received and units dispatched big time. Now let me say this part clearly. If you're currently automating and it adds minutes, it's not automation. It's paperwork with a voice. And in public safety, minutes are not an abstract metric. Minutes are outcomes. Speed without clarity is chaos. And clarity without speed is a liability. Stay safe. Thanks so much for listening. And if you're in public safety, thanks for what you do every single day. I'll see you next time.
You've been listening to Tips Today in Public Safety, your go-to podcast for today's breaking stories and public safety news. Hosted by Fletch and available every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Catch past episodes on 911tips.com. Be sure to like and subscribe, and remember to join us each week for the latest on NG 911. I am Spider Harrison, the official 911 voiceover dude. Catch me on Sirius XM on various channels, including 90s on 9, the 10 spot, and on the Weekend Countdown on Hits 1. Or don't regret it for the rest of your life. Either way, I'm good.